And so, that's something, with this move that we've been really talking about. How do we differentiate from what everyone else is doing? So at our new facility, we are actually growing some of our own grain. So we'll have a whole grain to glass experience. Now, a lot of people try to source their grain as locally as possible, but we're talking our front yard. So we're actually growing our own blue corn out there, which is something else that is unique to us. We are the only distillery in Kentucky that produces a bourbon using strictly blue corn.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Maggie Young, Director of Marketing and Distribution at Bluegrass Distillers. How you doing today, Maggie?
I'm doing good, Andrew. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for spending some time with us on Business Ninjas. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and about Bluegrass Distillers.
Yeah, of course. So, Bluegrass Distillers is located in Lexington, Kentucky currently. So I've been with the company for 6 years. My background is marketing and management. I went to the University of Kentucky, which is in Lexington, and that's how I got connected with the owners of Bluegrass Distillers. So I was the second full-time employee when I came on full-time in May of 2018. A lot's changed since then. So we started production back in 2012. We are on the bourbon trail. We're on the craft side of the bourbon trail in Kentucky. We've been on the trail since 2017. And then later this year, we're actually moving our operations about 25 minutes up the road to a town called Midway, Kentucky. Out there, we are going to expand our production capacity. Right now, we're doing about 300 barrels a year. Out there, we'll be able to do 30,000 barrels a year. We also grow our own grain out there. Our visitor center and gift shop is going to be way bigger than what we have currently. So we'll be able to host more visitors on the bourbon trail and do a lot more. So yeah, we've been around for quite some time. Kind of got in before the craft bourbon trend really took off, and now we're making this big jump. So there's a lot happening at Bluegrass.
Excellent. Now, 300 barrels a year, that's on the boutique side of things. That's very light production.
Yes. Yeah. So we, and 300 is a number that we hit last year. So when we first started, some years it was less than 100, some years it was, 150. So the numbers would fluctuate. That had to do, with equipment and staffing. Since about 2021, we operate right now. We have 4 distillers, and they operate Monday through Friday. There's 2 shifts, and then Saturday and Sunday there's 1 shift, and we're still, getting less than a barrel a day. So it's going to be a huge change in what we're able to produce. And obviously, from what our needs are, we need more than 300 barrels right now, just for our brands and for our growth, but we don't need 30,000 barrels. So when we move out here, we're actually going to be able to partner and work with other non-distiller producers, or what we call NDPs, and venture capitalists who want to start their own companies and their own start distilling their own bourbon. So there's going to be a new side of the business that's going to come with the move as well, to kind of fill in the gap for everything that, the space that we have, that we're not going to be utilizing.
Excellent. So at the moment, in terms of distribution, how far and wide are Bluegrass products going?
That's a great question. Our distribution is very interesting. So we are distributed in about 6 states right now, and not the states that you would think of. We're right here in Kentucky, so you would think Indiana, Tennessee, Ohio, and kind of surrounding states. Our distribution, we're down in Texas, we're in Nebraska, Michigan, Kentucky. We'll be launching in Georgia, DC area. I know I'm forgetting some. We work with some online retailers that are also able to ship. But what we look for in a distribution, from a distribution standpoint, like I mentioned, we've had a limited capacity for the past decade. So we need to work with a distributor who understands our limitations right now, but also wants to invest in us and believes in our company and our products, and knows that 5-6 years from now, the issues that we're having, the barriers that we're having with, being able to spend the money that we need to spend, or the amount of product that they want, that those issues won't be issues anymore come a few years. So for us, when it comes to distribution, we're not looking at, okay, let's get into all the states, or let's get into the states surrounding us. It's really more about that partnership, because with alcohol, you have to go through a 3-tier system. So we sell to a wholesaler, and then their sales team sells to on and off-premise accounts. So on-premise accounts being bars and restaurants, off-premise accounts being, retail stores. So you really got to work with the middlemen, and they got to, believe in you, because they're the people out on the floor selling it for you. So that's kind of why our distribution is kind of spread out. But it's mostly about finding the good fit versus finding the state.
Understood. You live in a land of compliance that varies wildly state by state.
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about the origin story of Bluegrass Distillers. When did they come to be?
Yeah, so Bluegrass started in 2012. There were 3 owners that founded Bluegrass Distillers. One, Sam Rock, is still with the company, and then we have another owner, Ben Franzini, as well. So there's 2 owners now, but they founded Bluegrass Distillers in 2012. The founders worked together prior in another business, actually in a tax company, and they kind of had moved away. Sam had moved, New York, Atlanta, and was moving back to Kentucky. And they're just entrepreneurs, and they decided they wanted to get back into business together. They didn't want to do, the tax accounting anymore. And Sam is a lawyer, and he's a general contractor, and he's a realtor, and he used to have his auctioneer license. So he just does a little bit of everything. And behind every distillery, you will find a lawyer. You'll also find an engineer, and Ben's an engineer. So they were interested in bourbon. And I mentioned earlier, bourbon has been taking off, as we all know. If you look up Kentucky bourbon, there are, it feels like once a month they're announcing a new distillery that's opening in Kentucky. But in 2012, that wasn't the case. Craft beer was still trending way up, and craft spirits hadn't really gotten there yet. This is, pre-Tito's being, the craft spirit, vodka that has really blown up that we've seen. So they actually learned from scratch. They went, I think, out to Colorado and took classes and learned how to distill. And Sam knew, about the compliance, being a lawyer. And then they found a location. We're actually still located there. It's the backside of a brewery in Lexington. So the zoning was good, and they started the distillery. So started it themselves. There's not any investors behind it, and that's still how we're operating. So where a lot of distilleries who started around the same time as us, 2012, 2013, have expanded 2 to 3 times, or, at least their equipment, they've gone from, a 200-gallon still to 2,000 to 20,000. We are just doing this one big jump. So it's taken about 10 years to kind of get to this point. But yeah, they just had interest in bourbon, and they were from Kentucky. And if you ask anyone in the world, or anyone who knows what Kentucky is, what we're known for, it's horse racing and bourbon. And they knew nothing about horse racing, and so buying a thoroughbred and getting into the horse industry is a lot of money. So is bourbon, but I think at the time they didn't really realize all that went into opening a bourbon distillery in the time. It's not like most businesses. You get it up, you get it running, you open your doors, there's a waiting period. So Yeah.
Yeah, nobody
So,
likes 6-month-old bourbon. You got some
yeah.
time before you can open your doors. So as
Yeah.
accountants, they went from consuming bourbon to now distilling it. That's an interesting path. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
my personal experience that sort of might educate some people into the bourbon explosion is 15 years ago, I was a single malt drinker, and the cost
Mhm.
of single malts in the United States has probably tripled in that period of time.
Mhm.
The Japanese bought up Macallan and Highland Park and companies like that and started throttling distribution in the States. And the price of single malts got cost prohibitive. That's how I started to discover single barrel bourbons and boutique bourbons, because it represented an incredible value in the product. So I got a feeling that that timing isn't just a coincidence. But hey, it's played into your hands, and here you are about to expand 100-fold, right? From 300 barrels a year to 30,000. That's quite an undertaking.
Mhm.
What makes Bluegrass stand out from its competition?
So bluegrass, kind of going back to what I, was just discussing, like when we first started, there weren't a lot of craft distilleries. There was the craft bourbon trail and there was the bourbon trail. And you could do the craft bourbon trail in a weekend, maybe 4 or 5 days if you're going to space it out. And same with the bourbon trail. Now, I don't even know how many distilleries are on the whole bourbon trail between craft and the larger distilleries. It's got to be like 60 plus.
Whoa.
So that's something, as we've grown, we really have to think, how do we differentiate who we are? Because there are a lot of bourbons out there. And when we're here in Kentucky, we produce 95% of the world's bourbon. And yes, there are some big brands that produce, the big brands might produce 85% of it, but now there's a lot of guys like us. And so, that's something, with this move that we've been really talking about, how do we differentiate from what everyone else is doing? So at our new facility, we are actually growing some of our own grain. So we'll have a whole grain to glass experience. Now, a lot of people try to source their grain as locally as possible, but I mean, we're talking our front yard. So we're actually growing our own blue corn out there, which is something else that is unique to us. We are the only distillery in Kentucky that produces a bourbon using strictly blue corn. So to be a bourbon, it's got to be made of at least 51% corn. So you're limited. Then you either use wheat or rye, or you might use a blend, and then you use malted barley, and that's it. So we like to get creative with our mash bills as well, like the blue corn. So we use blue corn and wheat, and that's something that brings in a lot of people, because that's something that most consumers have never had before, especially out of Kentucky. There are other distilleries across the country that produce blue corn products, but we are the only Kentucky one. With our new equipment that we're getting in and our new barrels that we're getting in, they aren't the same barrels that other distilleries use. We're actually working with cooperages from all over the world, out in California, over in Spain. They're still American white oak, but the seasoning of the barrels and how they're made and things like that, that are different from competitors. Some of these barrels that we're getting from Spain, no one in America has had them. So this Spanish cooperage only makes for wine. They mostly do wine manufacturing over in Europe. So we're getting the first American oak barrels from them. They're making them in Spain and sending them over, and we're the only ones who are going to have them. Our still has a lot of capabilities that some of the traditional stills don't have. So that's kind of been our big thing over the past year and a half, is how are we different, and how do we, go from where we are now and to this move and be authentic in who we are, but also continue to progress. And I think a lot of times with bourbon, it's so rooted in tradition.
Sure.
And I think one of our advantages is that we want to be more innovative. So we honored the tradition of bourbon and what bourbon is, but we always want to test boundaries and trying new mash bills, using different equipment, using different barrels, and get a little bit more innovative than what's commonly done in the industry.
This is a great story, and it's the year of storytelling. What How are you getting the story out? What role has content played in the growth of Bluegrass Distillers?
Yeah, so content, it's interesting being in our business as well. We are connecting on many fronts. So in Kentucky, a lot of it's tourism. Then we're in different states, and different states are different. What people consume, say in like Texas, versus the Northeast or even in Kentucky is going to be different. They got different holidays. It's hot down there right now. People aren't thinking about bourbon as much. So, content, we try to be very broad in our content. We actually have my coworker, Danny, she is 22, 23, and she runs our social media. And in a way it's refreshing, because she knows how to communicate with that younger generation. We have a TikTok now, which actually does really well. We post a lot of updates about the farm and, that we're moving to, and people go wild about that. So from a content standpoint, we try to, post a range of things. Our followers that have come to the distillery and know us, they care so much about our growth and how we're changing and what we're doing. But then in these new states, it's all about, look, we won this award, and we're doing this and we're award winning. And, you're trying to get the customer to buy into who you are and to your brand. And so, yeah, content is super important. And kind of going back to, the differentiating yourself. It's very important here in Kentucky, because when people come here, they have the option to go to 60, 70 other places. And so your content, what you post really matters. And what they see, all of our reviews are like, I saw good reviews on TripAdvisor, Yelp. I saw, their posts on social media. I saw that they were moving, and that's what brings people in. So you have to make sure, what you're posting is going to connect with a wide range of people. So.
Excellent. Well, I know that I used bourbon as a diplomatic tool last night. We are in our new home in Williamsburg, Virginia, and the neighborhood plays cornhole in the cul-de-sac right out front. So I made Kentucky mules and brought a tray out there, and I'm all their new best friend now. So
Well, there you go.
Bourbon for its diplomatic abilities as well.
Yes, it's very, very true.
Well, fast forward a year from today, what are some things you'd like to be celebrating personally and professionally?
Oh man, we definitely want to be out at the new place. It's been a journey. So we've been out there since February 21 is when we took over control of what we call the Elkwood Farm. And so hopefully a year from now, everything's done. It's going to be a phased move. So hopefully this time next summer, we're fully up and running, operational. We've worked out the kinks. There's always going to be kinks when you move and you have visitors out there, with directing traffic or what tours or people are more interested in. So my hope for Bluegrass is by this time next year, we're fully out at our new location in Midway and have kind of worked through most of the kinks, and professionally too. Just I don't know. I know, but I don't know. It's like my job is always changing and evolving, and I love that about it. But I do hope in a year to kind of be able to focus in more on certain things that I do versus almost like everything. Right now I'm like, hey, I'll come out and paint these bars if that's going to make us move fast. So I might be a painter right now, and I really hope a year from now, I'm able to focus a lot more on the brand and then building the brand, and I do that a lot. But once we're out there, I really hope that I can kind of turn my focus back to what I'm more passionate about with Bluegrass. But I'm learning a whole lot with this move, so I don't take that for granted. But professionally, I would like to be able to spend all of my energy on Bluegrass and the growth. our products.
As you expand your production 100-fold, I would assume that a lot of those hats that you've had to wear for the last few years would belong to some new people, and you get to be just the director of marketing and distribution, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a very broad title. So there's as we've talked, you've learned there's a lot that goes into distribution. Obviously with marketing too, it's not, we're not just marketing to the tourists, we're also marketing to every state that we're in and individuals. And we're also in the, wholesaling business of, we're going to fill barrels for people. We're going to help build brands for people. So we're bringing in new customers on that side too. So the marketing has also become very, very general. So it's fun, but yeah, it's hopefully get to focus more on that.
Excellent. Well, please tell everyone what your URL is, where they can find Bluegrass Distillers, and what social media outlets you're using these days as well.
Of course. So our website is bluegrassdistillers.com. You can also find us on Facebook at Bluegrass Distillers, Instagram at Bluegrass Distillers, and TikTok. If you are on TikTok, we mostly just post updates on the farm out there, some fun videos. So that's also at Bluegrass Distillers. And you'll be able to follow along on our move and our transition on the website too, that bluegrassdistillers.com. You can go to the tab distribution and you can see the states that we're distributed in. And there's also some online retailers that we work with that can ship to most states. I think both between the two of them, they cover about 48 states. So yeah, check us out, give us a try, follow along.
Excellent. Maggie Young, thank you for spending some time with me today here on Business Ninjas. I wish you and yours and Bluegrass Distillers all the best in your exponential growth as it comes to be in the near future.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I've enjoyed it.
My pleasure.